Hello kids. After learning about the plant nutrition, it's time to go for the animal nutrition. So, what are the questions we are going to answer today? The first one is what are the different components of the food? Then we'll answer is what are the different ways by which the animal take in the food? And finally, we'll see what happens to the food we eat. Okay. So the first question is what are the different components of the food? So now this should be very easy to you because you have already studied in your lower classes. So one of the component is proteins. Now this is used by the body to build your muscles. Then we have carbohydrates, which gives you the energy. And we also have fats, which is used by the body to store the energy for the future use. Then we have vitamins, which are very essential for boosting your immunity. Then we have minerals, which are necessary for your growth. For example, calcium is used by the bones. Now, these three components are called the macronutrients, and these two are called the micronutrients. And the reason is that the body needs these three in a large quantity and these two in a very small quantity. That's why they are called micronutrients and they are called macronutrients. Macro means large and micro is small. So now just like we studied in the plant nutrition that the plants cannot absorb the nitrogen present in the air and they need the help of the rhizobium bacteria to convert the nitrogen to the amino acids so that it can be easily absorbed by the plants. Similarly, these components are very complex in structure and cannot be absorbed directly by the body. So these components need to be converted into simpler form before they can be absorbed by the body, and this process is called digestion. We'll take one example of the proteins. Now this is the structure of a protein molecule, and here you can see that all the atoms, it is a very complex structure with the different kind of atoms connected with each other. Now these proteins are digested to the peptides. Now this structure is a lot simpler than this structure, but still it is not in that form which can be absorbed by the body. So the peptides are further converted to the amino acids. Now this is a very simple structure and it can be directly absorbed by the body. Now similarly, all other components are also converted to very simpler form before they are absorbed by the body. Alright. So the idea is that before whatever the components of the food is, we cannot absorb those components directly. First we need to digest those components and only then we can absorb the components. Alright, coming to the second questions, what are the different methods of the taking food? Now, different organisms have the different methods of taking food. For example, a bee sucks the nectar of a plant, and a snake swallows the small animals like rat, and the aquatic animals eat the foods floating in the water. So, different animals have a different ways of taking the food. Now, before we answer the last question, there is a small quiz for you. We'll be showing you some pictures of different organisms, and you have to guess means what is the food they eat and what is the method by which they take in their food, right? Okay. So the first one is snail. So what does snail eat and how does it eat? A snail eats the leaves and the method is called scraping. So it eats the leaves by scraping. It also not only eats the leaves, it also eats the fruits as well, right? Second is ants. Now this should be very easy because they chew the food particles, and in fact they love the sugary food particles. The ants are very fond of the sugary food particles. Eagle. Now, eagle swallows the small animals like fish or the rats. They actually tear the flesh of the small animals through their beak and swallows that flesh into their stomach. Next is the butterfly. Butterfly actually siphons the nectar out of a flower, right? So this butterfly is actually siphoning the nectar out of this flower. Next, mosquito. This is very easy. You know that the mosquito loves to suck your blood. So the mosquitoes suck the blood out of your veins. Then in the last we have a housefly. Now this housefly eats almost anything, and it does it by sponging. Sponging is a slightly different process in which it secretes a digestive juices onto the food particle. When this digestive juice falls onto the food particle, it digests or it mixes that food particle into the this digestive juice, and then this housefly sucks the digested food particle back into its mouth. So this process is called sponging. Okay, coming to the last question, what happens to the food we eat? Now this is a lengthy answer, so listen carefully. So before answering this question, first we'll have a look at what is the human digestive system. And the human digestive system consists of two parts. One is called the GI tract or the gastrointestinal tract, and the second is three organs: liver, gallbladder, and the pancreas, which assist the GI tract digestion of the food. So the GI tract starts from the mouth and ends at the anus. So it is a series of hollow organs connected with each other. So it starts from the mouth, then we have esophagus, mouth, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and it ends at the end. All these organs are hollow. And the second part of the digestive system is the liver, gallbladder, and the pancreas. Liver is a reddish brown color organ which secretes the bile juices, and these bile juices are stored into the gallbladder, and this gallbladder is connected to the small intestine through the bile duct. And last organ is the pancreas. This is a cream color organ which secretes the pancreatic juices into the small intestine through the pancreatic duct. Now let's have a look at the GI tract in detail. So the first is the mouth, and then we have a esophagus, and then we have a stomach, and this stomach is connected to the small intestine, and the small intestine has three parts. The top part is called the duodenum, the middle one is called the jejunum, and the last part is called the ileum. And this ileum is connected to the large intestine, and this end we have an appendix in the large intestine. Then we have an ascending colon, and then we have a transverse colon, and this is a descending colon, and at the end we have a rectum. And this is the end of a large intestine, and after that we have a anus. So this is our human digestive system. Now once we know what is our digestive system, now we are ready to answer what happens to the food we eat. Okay, so we'll go step by step, and first we take in the first step is that we take in the food into our mouth, and this process is called ingestion. Now in the mouth we chew the food and it breaks it into smaller pieces, and the saliva is also mixed into the food. This saliva converts the carbohydrates to the sugar, and it also makes the food smooth and slippery so that it can be easily passed down to the esophagus. So this is the step one. Now in the second step, once the food is thoroughly chewed and mixed with the saliva, now it is moved to the esophagus. This is the step 2. Now once it reaches the esophagus, the front, let's say the food particle is at this point. Now the muscles in the front of the food particle relaxes, and the muscle at the back of the food particle contracts. So it basically pushes the food particles downwards. So this process is called peristalsis, and this is the process by which the food particle moves from the mouth to the anus. So this peristalsis happens throughout the GI tract, right? and once the food reaches the stomach, there is a muscle or a valve at the entry of the stomach which is normally closed. So once the food reaches here, this muscle relaxes and the food comes inside the stomach. Now once the food is inside the stomach, this valve closes again so that the food cannot move back into the esophagus. Now what does the stomach do is that the stomach mixes and grinds the food it has taken in, and it also secretes the digestive juices and the hydrochloric acid, which helps in the killing the bacteria, means whatever bacteria has come inside with the food, it kills all the bacteria and digests the food. Now the inner wall of the stomach is a mucous membrane, so that the stomach is not damaged by the hydrochloric acid or the acidic contents present in the stomach. Now once the food is thoroughly mixed and is partially digested, there is another sphincter at the end of a stomach which opens up and the food is passed to the small intestine. Now once it reaches the small intestine, gallbladder pumps in the bile juices into the small intestine, pancreas pumps in the pancreatic juices into the small intestine, and the small intestine also generates some digestive juices. So now the food, once it passes through the small intestine, the food is almost thoroughly digested, or we can say that all the complex nutrients have been converted into simpler forms. Now at the end of the small intestine called ileum, the smaller nutrients which are broken down by the GI tract are absorbed into the blood through a finger-like structures called villi. So all the small nutrients are absorbed into the blood through the villi, and this process is called absorption. Now nutrients are present in the blood carries all these nutrients to the different parts of the body, and they use those parts of the body for constructing the complex structures, and this process is called assimilation. So assimilation is once the simpler food components are absorbed by the blood into the small intestine, they are passed to the different parts of the body, and there they are used by the different organs for their own functions, and this process is called assimilation. Now the unabsorbed and the undigested food is then passed to the large intestine. Now in the large intestine we have the bacteria which digest the undigested food, and it also absorbs the water out of the food. So finally, once the food passes through this large intestine, at the end it reaches to the rectum, and at this stage, since the water is also absorbed from the food particles, now the food is in kind of a semi-solid kind of state, so we also call it as a stool. So once it reaches the rectum, it gives a signal to the brain that the stool is ready to be passed out. So once you go to the washroom, and the stool can be passed out through the anus. Once this opens up and the stool is passed out of the body, and this process is called digestion, right? Okay, so this is what happens to the food we eat. Now let's have a look at it again once more, because this is a complex mechanism. Have a look at it again, right? So the first step is that the food is taken in from the mouth, where it is chewed by the teeth and saliva is mixed so that the carbohydrates are converted to the sugar, and the food is made slippery and smooth so that it can pass through the esophagus. Once it reaches the stomach, and the stomach mixes it with the hydrochloric acid and it churns the food, and after that it passes to the small intestine, where the other organs also secrete the juices. For example, gallbladder pumps in the bile, and the pancreas pumps in the pancreatic juices, and small intestine also secretes its own juices. And finally, at the end of small intestine, these small simpler substances are absorbed by the blood, and this process is called absorption. And finally, undigested and unabsorbed food passes through the large intestine, wherein water is absorbed and the bacteria digest the remaining part of the food. And at the end, it is formed in the form of a stool, and it is stored in the rectum, and finally we pass out the stool, right? Okay, that's all for the human digestion. Now at this stage you might have some confusion about the quiz we took. For example, you might have a question about what is the difference between the chewing and scraping, or what is the difference between sucking and siphoning. So if you want to know the answers to these questions, have a look at the description below, or these questions are answered in the descriptions, right? So that's all for this video. We'll complete the animal nutrition in the next video. Thanks for now. Bye.